Mount St Helens volcano, Mount Hood volcano, Mount Rainier volcano of the Cascade volcanoes are having earthquakes, and their seismic activity seems to have been picking up. And we'll take a look at the maps. Okay, this is our area near Tacoma, Washington. This is Mount Rainier, and this is the mount right there. You can see the Snow Peak Mountain, Mount Rainier. These are all their earthquake. Doesn't matter if they're small. It's because of the fact that it's volcanic activity. And south of that is Mount St. Helens. This is today's earthquake, 1 magnitude. You can see it right there. And Mount Hood, right there. Mount Hood as well. Okay. So, what's happening there? PNSN, Pacific Northwest. Okay, Tacoma, Mount Rainier right there. All these earthquakes. And that's Mount Hood. Where is it? That's right there is Mount St. Helens in the middle. Right there, on the peak of it. Okay, right there. Okay, Mount St. Helens. Right there. And we can go to our imagery. Right there. Pulling out a little bit again. You'll have a better picture as to where they are. Okay, Mount Rainier and Mount Hood right here. Mount Adams is right next to them. So what's going on there? Interactive map. Let's go to Mount St. Helens. Right there. Of course, nobody would have felt that. It's last erupted around 1980. Pacific Northwest earthquakes. Washington, Oregon, result of slip and fault in a variety of geographic and geological settings. This is an image of Mount St. Helens erupting 1980. Now, earthquakes in much of the region are a consequence of stresses associated with motion and of the Juan de Fuca oceanic plate to the northeast with respect to the North American plate at a rate of several centimeters per year, so they're moving pretty fast. This relative motion is largely made possible because the Juan de Fuca plate descends into the Earth's mantle below the North American continent along what's called the Cascadia subduction zone, which extends from northwestern California through western Oregon, western Washington to Vancouver Island, Canada. And we recently had a 5.3 earthquake there a few days ago off Vancouver Island. Now, earthquakes are associated with both the subduction process and deformation of the overriding North American plate. Seismologically terms, common use to describe the different modes of earthquake occurrence there. A megathrust earthquake, also called interplate or plate boundary quake in the context of subduction zone seismicity, resulting from rupture of the principal interface between the subduction Juan de Fuca plate and overriding North American plate. The last greatest megathrust earthquake in the Cascadia zone was in 1700, a 1,000-kilometer long rupture that's documented by studies of the resulting tsunami in Japan, by Native American oral traditions, and by geological depositions from tsunamis and offshore turbidity flows caused by the intense shaking and ground deformation associated with that earthquake. Most of the megathrust interface between Juan de Fuca and North American plate has not been seismically active in the decades during which it's been monitored by seismometers, except perhaps near Cape Mendocino, where the Gorda microplate commonly demarcated with the border of Juan de Fuca plate, and on one location offshore from Astoria, Oregon. But geodetic data shows that compressive tectonic strain is currently accumulating across the Cascadia megathrust as a result of the subduction process. So they have pressure accumulating there. Together with geological evidence for the 1700 and earlier earthquakes, the accumulation of compression tectonic strain implies that the recent quiescence of most of the Cascadia subduction zone megathrust is temporary, and the ongoing subduction process will cause large and great earthquakes in the future. Then we have the crustal earthquakes originating from slip-on faults. The interaction results in north-south oriented compression stresses. And these crustal earthquakes occur in the upper 25 kilometers of the Earth's crust. As we said before, the earthquakes there are pretty shallow, as we know, about 12 kilometers depth for one, magnitude 1 over Mount St Helens. And going back to this, many crustal fault zones have been mapped, including Seattle Fault Zone, the South Whidbey Island Fault and Devil's Mountain Fault, the Tacoma Fault, and the Puget Sound Lowlands and Spencer Canyon Fault in central Washington. But not all the active faults are mapped, and many crustal earthquakes occur on faults that don't reach the Earth's surface. The largest historically documented crustal earthquake was an 1872 magnitude 7 earthquake near Lake Chelan, and other crustal earthquakes include 1993 magnitude 5.6 at Scotts Hills, Oregon, 1993 magnitude 5.4. Then you have the deep earthquakes, and you have the volcanic earthquakes, and you have earthquake swarms. Volcanic earthquakes located near volcanoes are associated with volcanic processes, as we saw before. All these, Mount Hood, Rainier, and Mount St. Helens all had earthquake swarms this past week, and the latest today of 1 magnitude over Mount St. Helens. So the seismograms of many volcanic earthquakes have characteristics that are very similar to those of non-volcanic crustal earthquakes. These earthquakes are thought to result from the perturbation of the regional tectonic stresses, the stress field, by the intrusion of magma, and are denoted as volcanic tectonic earthquakes. Other volcanic earthquakes characterized by signals that are much different than non-volcanic crustal earthquakes and result from such process as magmatic flow, bubbling, and other process with the liquid magma chamber, landslides caused by the shallow intrusion of lava, or the explosive violence of the eruption itself. During magmatic unrest, Mount St. Helens, 1980 and 2004, hundreds of thousands of volcanic earthquakes took place. And of course, then you have the earthquake swarm, a term used to describe the temporal distribution of events in a sequence of earthquakes rather than a specific type of locale of earthquakes. The term is used to denote a sequence of earthquakes in a small geographic area that are of similar size, in contrast to main shock or aftershock sequence, in which a larger main shock, perhaps preceded by a fewer smaller foreshocks, is followed by a sequence of numerous smaller shocks that occur at a generally decreasing rate with time. The term swarm may be applied to sequences that last for hours to years, with the largest earthquake in the sequence commonly occurring after the sequence has begun. The term swarm may be used for sequences consisting of dozens of earthquakes as well as sequences that consist of thousands of shocks. Volcanic unrest is typically associated with a swarm of volcanic earthquakes at or near a volcano, according to the USGS description having to do with the Mount St. Helens. Well, this is generally for the Cascade volcanoes. So we see that they're pretty active. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. All of you there, please be very alert and careful. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support, and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.